The cross is the only symbol we need on Good Friday. If we were worshiping in many sanctuaries around the world together today, we would have stripped our spaces down last night on Maundy Thursday. We would have taken away the flowers, the candlesticks, the paraments, the linens, and left a bare altar. A stark worshiping space. The only thing left for us to look at, the cross. Fortunately for this year, because we are not in sanctuaries gathered together, many of us have crosses in our homes, crosses hung on our walls, beloved crosses we were given as gifts, crosses that we wear on our bodies. And this Good Friday, I am inviting you to lay a cross, any cross, before you. What does that cross mean for us during this year of the spread of COVID-19? Certainly one answer is this: the cross reveals God sharing in our every grief. The cross shows God in Jesus joining us in our humanity, our human sickness and suffering, and even in death itself. The cross gives us a divine companion, Jesus Christ, who walks with us and before us whenever we are lost or betrayed or forsaken or in pain. But the mystery of the cross is deeper, greater than that. The cross is also God's way of disrupting in one act for all time evil and sin and death itself. Evil and sin and death, which seem to be the heavyweights in our world, are broken open in the crucifixion. On the cross, sin is forgiven, death is cracked open, and new life emerges through the fissure. And evil is vanquished. There's certainly enough evil on display in the Passion account that we read today. John's Passion, the gospel appointed for Good Friday, shows us our human inclination toward evil. We'd like to think that evil was intentional, because then it would be so easy to point fingers at the really bad guys. Judas is one of those satisfyingly bad guys in John's gospel. He intentionally betrays Jesus out of petty greed, love of money. But then there's Simon Peter. Simon Peter, who intends with all his heart to stay with his Lord to the end. But so quickly, Peter succumbs to his fears and around a charcoal fire denies that he even knows who Jesus is. I do not know the man. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then there is Pilate. Pilate, who knows that Jesus is innocent. He finds no case against him, yet out of fear, he gives into the crowd, and he sends one who is not guilty to a horrific death. These are the more dangerous evils, aren't they? The sins that we don't think we'll ever commit because we're better than that. We'd like to think that we'd be heroes, or at least the good guys when the opportunity presents itself. At least decent human beings. We wouldn't hoard or hide. We wouldn't bear false witness against our neighbors. We wouldn't allow fear to guide our actions. But all the bleach and all the masks and all the social distancing practices can't protect us from being infected by fear. We are infected by this virus of fear. Fear of losing our freedoms, fear of touching the sick, fear of gathering, fear of scarcity. Surely there is not enough food or cleaning supplies or personal protective equipment or ventilators. But this is the message of Good Friday, the message of the cross. In the face of all our fears, God in Jesus Christ has disrupted the power of evil. God in Jesus Christ has disrupted evil and sin and death itself. God uses the cross, a tool that embodies our worst human tendencies, to bring about forgiveness and hope and resurrection. The cross is the doorway to the empty tomb, the place where the light will come in. But even before the empty tomb, Jesus works good from the cross, from the very place of evil. From the cross, Jesus sees his mother and the disciple whom he loves. He says to his mother, "Here is your son." And he says to the disciple, "Here is your mother." The dying Jesus sees two people who are afraid of losing everything. And Jesus binds them together, creates a new family where no family was, a mother and a son who will care for one another. Friends, we are in a time of great disruption, a disruption that is before unknown. And part of that disruption stems from being all too aware through the global power of the internet. We know how many people have been diagnosed in Australia, and we have seen pictures of the numerous coffins in Spain, and we have read of the overrun emergency rooms in New York City. It is not just wide world suffering that we are experiencing right now. It is awareness of others' suffering. Not to mention pretty good science telling us that this virus has weeks or months to wax before it wanes, and then it will probably wax again. COVID-19 is disrupting the world as we know it, and much of this disruption is cause for deep sorrow. But on Good Friday, we look to the cross. We look to the cross that God used to disrupt the powers of evil and sin and death. In this present time, this time of disruption, but also through this time of disruption, God is still at work for good. And perhaps over the coming weeks and months, we will learn how to do less, or at least how to schedule less. We will learn how to scar our planet less and savor our time outdoors more. And contemplate the future less, and live in the present more. Worry less about our material needs and give more of what is extra away to those who truly need it. Perhaps during this time of disruption, we will learn to rework our healthcare system and really value our children's teachers, and be grateful. Be grateful for those little things we took for granted just a month ago. Sharing Holy Eucharist in Big Sky Chapel, attending weddings, making our way through a crowded school building, bustling with all our neighbors at a store somewhere, visiting the dentist, going to a hair cutter, traveling to see dear friends across the country. Perhaps we will learn these things. Perhaps God is reshaping our world, the world as we know it, even now. I read in the news just this week that the largest Gothic cathedral in the world, that great unfinished St. John the Divine in Manhattan, will become a field hospital in the coming week. This cathedral in New York City is dear to me. As a child, my school held our Christmas pageants there, and I wandered through its large stone pillars and gazed up at the rose window. And as a teenager, I had my first job at the Hungarian pastry shop right across the street. And I would balance coffee cups and pastries and steal glances at the cathedral, that beautiful edifice. And now we'll talk about disruption. Cathedrals are built for worship, for people coming to gather and pray and sing. But of course, such services are impossible now. They are disrupted. And thanks be to God that the dean of the cathedral saw how this time of disruption could be for the good. The cathedral can offer its thousands of square feet above and below ground for hospital beds. So this house of God will become, in the days ahead, a house for the suffering, the sick, and the dying. In other words, a house for Jesus, whom we meet in so many hurting bodies. This house of God will perhaps become a place where some people can find rest and even healing. What if each of us were like that cathedral, willing to be disrupted, willing to be transformed, willing to change when the need is there? But back to the cross that is before you right now. On Good Friday, we turn our eyes to the cross. The cross is the sign of God's presence with us and God's disruption of evil itself. And at the cross, we lay our prayers, our deepest desires, our laments, and our thanksgivings. Join me this Good Friday as we pray together for our disrupted world.